Thanks for tuning in to the All Funds Investment Podcast. Today's episode features Rassul Faisalot. Rassul is the president and CEO of Data Talent Advisors, a boutique data analytics and AI talent acquisition firm. Quick plug, Rassul and his team recently launched mycovercv.com. This will help those looking for a new career with a job hunting strategy. They also provide different tools like professionally edited custom video cover letters. We recommend checking them out if you're looking for a new career. In this episode, we discuss big data, AI, and how these industries have evolved over time. We talk about ways that companies are currently using AI and ways that every business can implement AI. Just a reminder here that nothing said is legal, tax, or investment advice. Check out the full disclaimer below. We hope you enjoy this conversation. Please like and subscribe if you find this information helpful. And if you'd like to be on the show, drop us an email, info@altfunds.io, or you could fill out our form below. Lastly, check out the description to connect with us and Rassul. I'd love to get your perspective. What is AI? What is big data? And we'd love to learn a little bit about your background, just how you got into the space, the recruiting space, and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, I'd love to. Great question, Mike. Question that comes up quite a bit. So let me take on the first part, how I kind of got into the space, and then we'll get into the whole AI and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm a guy. Just really, my background is I'm kind of an oddball that went to I was studying chemical engineering and all that, and I was actually bartending in college. Had spiked hair and loops in my ears and all this. I didn't look like your typical chemical engineering student, honestly.
Nice.
That's when I kind of got into recruiting. So I ended up graduating with a chemistry degree, and wanted to just be with people, in front of people. I was actually on the sales side of things. And one of the things that happened is I got into one of the most addictive careers you can get into. And I think people that have been in consulting will tell you that, because it's just so many different problems you're solving, people you're interacting with. It's just a very exciting career path. Highly recommend it for people that are coming out of school if they want to sample a bunch of different industries. But how I got into consulting was through sales or whatever, people that I know. But once I got into the segment, I realized, oh my God, it's so cool. Your product is actually people in this space. And so for me, being kind of extrovert, um, introvert in some ways, I guess, or was taking academic classes with the introverts, it was just very interesting for me to get into this segment. And I realized that I could actually help some of the HR folks, because people are our main product. So I started to assist them with talent acquisition, because some of the areas that I was working in were at the beginnings of the enterprise mobile apps. And then the enterprise mobile apps at the time were being driven, the data was driving them. So I really wanted to specialize in a niche. And I realized that data is really the thing behind these apps, just to stick to the data side. So I've been very, uh, you know, uh, focused on the whole data side of things, and I would pass up other career opportunities that were going to take me out of the data sector to just really stick to data. And I've been in this segment now for about 10 years. But the way that I got in was to help out the HR folks vet the candidates that they were interviewing, because it was always terrible as a consulting firm to put a candidate in front of a client, and the client realizes this person doesn't have the skills that they need. And when I was working in the sector at the beginning, by putting a couple keywords there or just tweaking your resume, I mean, these candidates are not no dummies. They're very smart. They know what keywords and things to put in to just pass the HR interview or whatever. And they could get an uptick, in salary of like 30 or 40%, in some cases even more. So that's why I got in there. I was like a sneaky first level tech screen, like a soft tech screen that I was doing for HR to help vet the candidates before we even get them into the whole interview process, because we were wasting a lot of time with people that weren't qualified. So that's really how I got in to the whole recruiting segment, doing that. And as I started to interview people and just the whole interaction with so many different people, I just found it to be very interesting. And I haven't kind of looked back since then. And I've been really focused in this area. So because I have somewhat of a, you know, analytical background, if you will, a STEM background, um, what happened was I was asking some of the different folks that I know, some of the engineers, the architects, all these folks about different technologies and things. Well, the reality is a lot of these people, they're working, they're doing their different projects and things like that they're working on. they don't have the time to look at all these different technologies that are available. They're not like a consulting firm or some sort of a buyer for an organization where they're evaluating all these different tools. So I decided to take my ability to be able to digest a lot of this technical information and just do a bunch of research, start blogging about some of these different technologies, because the things that I was reading in places like TechCrunch, um, what is it, Wired, or some of these other tech publications that are out there, Mashable would be another one, they
Yeah.
were 80% correct. And 80% correct, you wouldn't take a flight on an airplane that was 80% correctly built. Kind of a
No,
similar
not at all.
concept. So you really need to, these little, the devil is in the details, as they say. And I realized that even the writers, the journalists that were writing about these things didn't have the technical acumen to be able to even correctly state these things. So I took it on myself to write some of these things, to create, to clarify some of these murky waters when it comes to some of these different technologies. One of the big ones that came out at the very beginnings of big data was Hadoop, with the little elephant, the yellow elephant that people are kind of familiar with. They were comparing, apples and oranges in this article that I was reading. And so I kind of like rewrote it my own way and posted it on LinkedIn and just kept on doing that. It was just a lot of fun. Similar to what you guys are doing with these podcasts, which I really appreciate. I
Yeah.
was doing that from a blogging standpoint where try to get all this, but it's a lot of work. It's, you really have to research some of the technologies and things that are coming out. Like we have a whole thing right now happening with vector databases. So that's kind of the way that I got into it. I just took a little bit more of a technical approach, kind of a white glove, boutique approach. And as a result, most of the clients that we work with today, they understand from a quality standpoint, because I do a lot of this research and I'm pretty well versed in some of these different technologies, that targeting is not an issue for us. That's why they work with us.
Mhm.
We're not a volume shop. I mean, honestly, you only need 7 bullseyes. And
Mhm.
I mean, I hate to say it, I don't want to toot my own horn, but we're able to throw bullseyes pretty readily because we know the tech stack extremely well. So that's why they come to us. And, you know, I love what I do. So as far as your other questions, I hope that wasn't too long winded.
No, that's
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 good.
helpful. Actually, I really I appreciate the background. I love how you kind of started and just dug in and did the research and kind of got your hands dirty,
Yeah,
and
I didn't know
wow,
recruiting,
that's
man.
great.
I didn't know it. So, but the thing
Yeah,
is that what I realized, where you really bring value is you bring a knowledge base. So, I mean, I just kind of took the concept of, I mean, Corn Ferry was really kind of built on this, right? Corn Ferry is really taking a bunch of executives that were helping you with executive placement. I mean, you could do a similar thing. I'm sure there's maybe somebody out there that's a doctor that's recruiting doctors, or a lawyer that's recruiting lawyers. I mean, the pay is that the money's there. I mean, everybody knows that. So think about it, working with somebody like that. So I really think overall, the recruiting industry as a whole is starting to move more and more towards specialist recruiters. That is already happening. We have security specialists, finance specialists. As you guys know, you may have interacted with some of them. I mean, you really
Mhm.
mhm.
appreciate it as a finance professional or as a lawyer or as a doctor if you're working with somebody that's actually worked within your sector. That's basically who I am for a lot of these developer type guys, because I was, and gals, by the way. The thing is that you know it's just been quite a journey going, through the whole evolution with big data and everything. So coming back to your other question, as far as big data goes, what is big data? What is machine learning? What is a lot of this stuff? We hear a lot of these buzzwords. So first of all, one of the things that I say to people, one of my favorite movies of all time is Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, as you guys know, and Sean Young. Amazing movie. But with the replicants that they have, I mean, that is really truly AI. So just think about like Sean Young when they're in that scene and he's trying to figure out if she's a human or a replicant, which is the AI bots, if you will. So
Yeah,
so AI is really those things. So the AI you can learn. So machine learning. Okay. So when you do machine learning at a higher level, it's really called deep learning. It's getting really really good. So that's one of the veins. Another vein would be, if you're able to talk and things like that, would be computer vision, right? The other thing
Mhm.
would be speech. There's robotics, right? So there's many pieces to it. Natural language processing is another one. So everybody's really excited about ChatGPT, all this stuff. So ChatGPT, that's one of the
Mhm.
things that it's doing. Natural language processing is part of that, right? How it's able to understand what you're typing into the system. So really, that's what AI is. It has all these pieces. Now, in order for us to have moved in to this, I think, I mean, we're pretty much in the age of AI now, but in order for us to
Yeah.
have moved into this sector, we really needed to do some different things. So at the very beginning, I mean, maybe some people may have their opinions, but I think it's all started with just databases in general. We moved into data warehouses, a place you needed to keep all your data, right, for compliance and regulatory reasons and whatever, especially in the finance sector. And then really layered on top of it, the next evolution was business intelligence. Hey, how can we get from this big amounts of data that we're holding on to, how can we pull reports and things like that? That's where a lot of these things like Cognos you may have heard of, and some of these systems came out, and later on some of the newer ones are Tableau and Click
Yeah.
and the various other ones that have come out over the years. So this is kind of, again, we're moving more towards big data. So then it came to a point where you have all these different systems, and believe it or not, even though we're talking about AI and all this stuff, the big clunky mainframes are still there. Man, they're everywhere. They are
Yeah.
everywhere. I mean, IBM still has, I don't even know what they're on, the Z15 or whatever that their number is, but they're,
Version. Yeah.
they're not as massive as they used to be. Um, but yeah, so that's a form of big data in a way as well. And what happened was, I think the big thing that happened was where we started to understand master data management, meaning that we needed to get all this data that's been entered in all these disparate silos that are everywhere to kind of speak the same language. Even the way we're entering the data, let's say in Salesforce versus some other system that we have, it wasn't, when you kind of try to blend it all together, it just doesn't work. So really the master data management was something that a lot of organizations took part in, I would say around 2011, 2012. This is with Hadoop. And once you got your data to kind of align and talk the same language, then you could actually do things with it. And there was a terminology being used, a data lake is a terminology that you heard quite a bit. But that's what that's all about. And believe it or not, there are a lot of corporations that are still not there. they're not they're not at the data lake level. Okay,
Like
so
these
so
different systems are not connecting together, is what you're saying.
they're not they're not talking to each other. And gosh, what was it? Yeah, it's just you'll be surprised how many organizations are not quite there. I was just actually technologically. I mean, we see some things that are leaked. Like with the Southwest Airlines, where they didn't upgrade a software or whatever. I mean, this is just upgrading a
Yeah.
software. We're not even talking about data lakes or anything. Okay, so that's crazy. Like that happening. There was another thing that I just posted. I haven't posted it on LinkedIn yet, but I was reading about it over the weekend. Is these RFIDs? A lot of the car manufacturers, they're a little behind technologically, as you can, I mean, I know they've gotten better with the displays and things, but I have a 2019 Nissan and it looks like Atari, my navigation. It's a total joke. But and this RFID thing, what this is about is thieves are basically coming all the way to your house, and they're copying your RFID. They're able to take the signal with the device that they have, copy it, and then basically, now that they've copied it on this little device, they walk all the way to your front door to do this, and then they can basically replicate that, open your car, and turn it on electronically, like
I've I've
keyless, and drive
I've
off with
seen
your car.
this on YouTube
That's
where
crazy.
they were saying like you should be putting your keys in a little like package because these people come up with
Yeah,
these antennas and
yeah, yeah. I mean, this is kind of a security
No.
thing or whatever, but I mean, this is kind of a downfall from a QA standpoint or whatever when you're building. I mean, I've never been a fan of the whole keyless thing. I'm not. I always thought it was kind of a Fonzie move. Cool guy, like that kind of thing. I've never been into the keyless system. I don't understand how much time it's actually saving me for me not to actually open my, you know what I mean? Like, it's just for me,
Yeah.
I never saw the value of this system. But what I didn't like is if the battery is like all of a sudden discharged, right? And it's not working for me now. I've gotten used to it, or hopefully you have the one that has the actual physical key. But I don't want to get off track too much. But my point is that a lot of these things that you see, these are little peaks into organizations not really being there fully, okay, as far as where they need to be technologically, okay? I mean, if you look at a Tesla and some of the things that they're doing from the reason a Tesla is going to be so much more advanced in this way is because they actually built from a very clean environment that had nothing in it. The problem with these businesses that are already established is you're having to go into an environment that's already established, don't break anything that's already working and making money for us, and try to, within the confines of this environment that has legacy systems and maybe some newer systems, try to build something. So that's a bit more difficult. That's why the newer companies are able to disrupt like the way they are. But okay, so I digress. So as far as what I'm saying about these companies and the MDM, going back to that, the thing is that once you start to get the data to talk, you're able to do a lot of the big data stuff that you want to do. And the bottom line with any of these technologies or things that companies want to do, the bottom line is they need to improve the business. They need to look at their KPIs, their business objectives. That's really the use cases. There's no such thing as AI use cases. There are business objectives and there are actual use cases for the business and how to improve it. Like, for instance, we're talking to a company that is like an e-commerce company for selling cars. Okay, one of the problems they have is the parts. When they want to sell parts to people, it's taking something like 2 months to get it to them because across many different manufacturers, different years, different types of parts, whatever, the location of the parts is just, as you can imagine, a disaster. Look at all the different parts that go into a car. So this is where
Yeah.
AI, vector databases in particular, can be very powerful. So, because really the way that vector databases work is you have, your Y and X and Z axis, if you will. These are like 3 dimensions, right? Vector databases work with multiple dimensions. Like, it's kind of even hard to imagine. So, you can literally pinpoint uh, anything. You can use a vector database and actually organize somebody's genome without no problem. We'd be able to, um, do a retrieval or whatever. So that's a good use case right there. One of the things at the very beginnings of big data, people were really, hell bent on using Hadoop some way. So a lot of these big financial firms had a lot of data that they were paying for, and their data warehouse
Mhm.
providers, which charges them by the terabyte, right? So the more data you have, the more you pay. I think it was companies like Citi, they were paying upwards of over $100 million a year in data warehousing costs at the
Wow.
time.
Wow.
Okay, so that's a lot.
That's
So there's a
huge.
use case right there. How can we reduce that bill? How can we not rip and replace our data warehouse, but how can we optimize it? So there was a terminology being used, data warehouse optimization. You basically, throw it off into Hadoop. And the reason why people went into Hadoop, I hope I'm not putting everybody to sleep with all this.
No, you're
But
good.
Yes. Yeah.
No, this is good. Yeah.
so the reason we went off into Hadoop, and it even came about, is the guys at Facebook and Twitter and all these places, they couldn't buy servers fast enough. They needed something that needed to that could scale. So even though the banking sector was trying to use it as a way to do data warehouse optimization, but really the beginnings of Hadoop, how it came about, is because they couldn't buy servers fast enough, and they needed a distributed file system, HDFS, Hadoop distributed file system, is really the part where it actually is able to scale pretty readily. Okay. The problem with Hadoop later on, we found out, was the labor is hard to retain and
Hmm.
they get pretty expensive. But Hadoop is really just that file system. You need somewhere where you need to process the data and a resource manager. That's really 3 pieces to it. And that is, Hadoop, why it came about, and companies decided to work with Hadoop. It was really a lot of on-prem implementations and things. And the companies that actually went through that journey, even though they spent millions of dollars, and some are still using it to this day, it's not like it was garbage. They realized that they would get even more flexibility if they went into the cloud, and that's where the evolution of these different big data as a service companies came out, and Snowflake ultimately, which was actually a cloud data warehouse system,
Mhm.
really had all those components of distributed file system, data processing engine, and resource manager. I mean, essentially, it had that. I mean, you can
Had
call
the
it whatever you want to
infrastructure.
call it, but it was addressing that need, and it's
Mhm.
gotten really popular. So the two that we hear about now in this segment with the data, uh, Databricks and Snowflake are the two that you will hear a lot about. Those are the two, and actually now it's been remarketed under a different name. Data Lakehouse Platform is what they're being called. Um, so that's kind of where we are there. Now, as far as this AI stuff that a lot of companies are talking about, now you still have to get your data in order with master data management in order to be able to do
Mhm.
AI, or even further. Okay, so actually, I did a post on this. So let me just explain that real quick, because we all talk about AI and we've heard. So basically, before we even get into the LLMs, large language models, that I know everybody knows that terminology, there is an architecture underneath that's called the transformers. That is the transformers, is the architecture that allows the large language models to be able to learn and to create these systems. So let's say that you wanted to create, let's say that you could do a lot of things. It could be artwork, or it could actually be a book or whatever. One of the videos that I did was talking about, let's say, William Shakespeare's works. You would feed it, okay, the
Mhm.
LLMs. So you've got the transformer in place. The large language models can now read or digest Shakespeare stuff, and then a terminology that we use in science, like where you have a graph like this, right? You have, like, it goes here. You don't really have any data points here, but if you can see how it's moving, and you can kind of guess that it's going to go up this way or whatever from the, even though you don't have those data points yet. So that's called extrapolation. So extrapolation um, is basically what generative AI is. It's, you don't really have that information, but based off the information that you have, that you've uh, put into the large language models, you're able to create
Come up with.
new works that Shakespeare never
That's good.
knew
Yeah.
existed, by using statistical, let's say, uh, educated guessing, for a lack of a better terminology, but it's actually called extrapolation. Is what you would be doing with generative AI. So does that help a
That's interesting.
little?
Yeah, no, that's great. So it sounds like we've come a long way with. I mean, obviously, the cloud was a game changer for many, but it sounds like from what you're saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, a lot of data management is definitely key. Clean data, and a lot of firms haven't got to that point yet, but they're looking at AI, and that really is maybe a foundational element to have
Yes.
your data in play there and have it in a good way to where you can actually take advantage of AI
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
become
Everybody's
valuable.
talking about a Tudor or a Victorian house that they're going to build, but unfortunately, the foundation hasn't been poured yet. So that's really my
Right.
analogy for it. So that's where people need to go. It's not the most glamorous work, the MDM stuff, but and then the other thing with the MDM, master data management, is the actual data quality that you've got to look at. And then, in order for you not to get into this mess again, you have to have a system called data governance to make sure that once you've cleaned it all up and fixed it, just like anything, right? When we clean our home or whatever, if you have a room that's gotten really messy, you put together a
Right.
system so you don't go back there again. And that's really what needs to happen. But part of it, and I think we touched on this the last time, within banking, uh, within insurance, whatever the firm may be, especially when they get larger, he or she who owns the data owns has a
That's a
lot of
good.
power. So there's been a lot of let's say political strife there's been some battles in different
Yeah.
companies, and I think a lot of people that
So
work
that's interesting.
in the sector.
That's interesting, just about kind of where people are at, with data. So from a financial services perspective, what have you seen as trends lately when it comes to data, to AI, data enrichment? Are a lot of financial services behind the eight ball? Are they behind the times? Are a lot of people kind
Oh,
of
okay. So
up
yeah,
to
that's another.
speed?
I'm glad you're asking this question because that's not really what I want people. I didn't want to convey that at
Yeah,
all. I was just saying
sure.
large companies. Now, the one thing that I will say, financial services has actually been in one of the lead positions, and thank goodness for financial services because they are some of the main folks between telecom. I would say insurance is another sector. They're some of the leaders. One of the reasons that they were very motivated to do or put together a lot of these proof of concepts for big data projects was really a lot of the risk and fraud analytics. I mean, you guys know about things like Basel and CCAR and all these lovely regulatory things that whatever you do, any move that you make within financial services, you got to make sure you got to tick those boxes. So
Right.
so financial services, I would say, is actually more in the lead position, and they really get it. They've become uh, they're very aware of the market, especially technology leaders in this segment. They know the rates. They're very good. They're very keen on uh, a lot of this. Now, some of the stumbling blocks that they've had is just these same regulatory compliance things have held them back. And then there's also the politics angle. But the really good leaders have been able to navigate through all this. I mean, Capital One Bank, I think I mentioned this on the last call that we were on. That
Hmm.
CEO many years ago said that we're not going to be a bank. We're going to be a technology company first that
Wow.
that provides banking. And honestly, that company is an amazing example of the way you're supposed to do things. Um, so there are some other big corporations like this within healthcare that have done a pretty good job with getting their data in order. I'm not being sponsored by any of these companies, but this is just reality for a lot of folks that work in this sector. United Healthcare is
Sure.
quite good in Minneapolis uh, with what they're doing. But these people were in the game back in 2012, spending millions of
They've been doing it for
dollars to get,
a long time.
because you have your trials and tribulations anytime you do something new. Just like the way you guys are doing this podcast, you learn stuff, but you got to get in there. If you don't get in the pool, you're
Yeah.
not going
Right.
to know. So, financial services, Skylar, I would say is they're one of the leading uh, organizations or industries that's been doing a lot of this big data stuff and probably most um, well positioned for doing AI and many of the benefits that they could reap from it because they've done a lot of the work already.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great insight there. I'm just curious too, just from our perspective, and kind of we get asked quite a bit is, as you kind of get into this in our space, in the fund services space, alternative investment space, whether it be a fund manager who's looking to launch a fund, whether it be on the front end of capital raising, marketing, and then operational items, and then service providers like fund administrators, accounting firms, even
Yeah.
legal firms, attorneys, or whatnot. They're all kind of asking questions. Number one, what's the real use case for me based on my, operational infrastructure of my
Yeah.
business, and how do I keep my business, until my private activity private, from a cybersecurity risk perspective,
Exactly.
without, as I'm trying to bring this to fruition in my company. You mentioned data management, all those things. Using AI, what's the best use case for them? I guess you said, to your point, it's not an AI use case; it's just a business use
Yeah. What
case augmenting with AI.
exactly? What do you want to do? So one of the things that this is where I have to stay in my lane as a recruiter. Um, and this is where folks that are more doing some of the delivery and some of the actual architects, the data architects and folks like that would be a great resource for the specifics. Because the other thing that you need to also couple those folks with anything like this that you do is the data governance folks as well. You don't want to have any. I mean, in finance, the big thing is that you just half of what you're trying to do technologically is regulatory and compliance. That's the big thing. I mean, you can want to do all these different things, but you've got to make sure that you're not going to get fined or violate something.
Yeah.
So that's a major
Right.
piece of it. But the other thing is that, yeah, what are some of the things that you're trying to do? Are you trying to do well, big business use cases? How do I identify people that are going to need my services? How can I do that more readily? What are ways that I can market our company better using or servicing our clients or whatever it may be? These are very valid AI use cases, and there are things out there that you can do that. Actually, one of the things that's gotten quite good, especially with the advent of ChatGPT, uh, I know that we all have dealt with our fair share of automated phone calls where we're yelling 5, 5, 4, whatever the option is,
Constantly.
and it's not
Right.
registering. With the advent of ChatGPT, I mean, these chatbots or the speech enabled, the AI enabled services, they're quite good because
Yeah.
the thing that we didn't have before is what the large language models do is it increases the sample size, meaning that, like, whereas before when you're building some of these telecommunication systems, there's like a menu of different things that you can say that it's going to understand. Like, it's going to maybe have, like, let's say 100 things that if it hears, it's going to ask you this or whatever. With LLMs, the possibilities of what you could say, it's a ton. I mean, it's going to be maybe thousands of things you could possibly say, and it's going to be able to actually comprehend and come back with a
That's
response
amazing.
where you're like, wow. So this is an area I think that many of these businesses, just businesses in general, whether it's financial services or not, as long as you have, I'm sure there's going to be some indicator where you have to let the person know, hey, I just want you to know you're going to talk to our AI chatbot uh, on the phone, Sally, whatever that you give as the bot's name, but it is amazing how well they're able to help you, way above and beyond what we've dealt with calling American Express or like our cable
Yeah, I
company or
think
whatever.
customer service sounds like a really low hanging fruit for a lot of these folks.
Amazing, but even believe it or not, from a sales standpoint, at least from a business development, maybe even a lead generation standpoint, it can actually be utilized that way as well. And this,
Yeah, it's definitely
go ahead.
pretty amazing with the two that I'm seeing. Yeah.
Yeah, talk more about that. What are you seeing on the biz dev side?
Yeah, so I've look, we've kind of started to evaluate some tools that are out there. What's crazy is that there's a lot of tools that are being developed almost every week. It seems like so. There are tools out there that will actually, make the calls and start to, have conversations with people just to get you some information. Now, I'm not sure what and this is where, again, I got to stay in my lane because financial services, you do have a lot of your regulatory compliance components that have to be checked off. But this is why we have, I wouldn't say too much of a lull. Companies are already starting to do some of their hiring within the AI sector. I mean, we just saw what is it, the White House Artificial Intelligence Council that was just established not too long ago.
Yeah,
I mean, that just kind of gives you
that's
an
right.
idea. I mean, we have it in our government. We have an actual agency for it. So you're going to start to see more of it. Um, Many companies that I would consider to be leaders, they were already headed this way anyway because they've checked off a lot of those prerequisites. But this other component with the generative AI, you have to be a little bit careful. Okay, it's not a silver bullet. Human intervention still needs to be there, at least for right now, because the one thing that you want to be careful of is if you let this thing go on its own without there being any human intervention, um, like even with ChatGPT, when you're playing around with it, the answers are not always accurate. I think we all, I don't know if how much you've played with it, but that's
Yeah.
something that a lot
Definitely
of
seen
people
some
that
of
I
that.
know that work with it, including myself, have come across. So it's an area just like a baby, you know, it's got to mature, evolve, adapt, in order for it to become something that um, is going to be powerful for the organization. But the fact that ChatGPT has taken on the world like the way it has, it's no longer people are no longer able to sit on the sidelines. They need to jump on in there, or they could find themselves really behind the eight ball if they don't. They
Yeah.
realize that a lot of technology leaders finally.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm curious too. Just, I mean, one thing you said, which is great. Human intervention. I think there's a lot of noise and fear out there, right, as to what it can and can't do, and what it will
Yeah,
replace if it replaces someone's job. But to your point, the human insight and expertise really is should be driving the bus. And you should use it to more of a scalable play augmentation of what you already do on a daily basis. Is that accurate to say?
yeah,
Would you say that?
right on. Yep. No, it's absolutely accurate. That's the one area. Who was it? I was watching a speech that Jack Ma, the guy that created Alibaba,
Yep.
he
Yeah.
was like, "Look, we just need to train our kids to have better soft skills with AI.
Mm.
Being an amazing mathematician or a chemist or whatever. A lot of these things. I mean, maybe a lawyer. I won't include in that group because a lawyer still takes that persuasive soft skills and um, you know the thing is that any job where it's going to require soft skills and not this out of the box thinking. Um, and I would even say creativity, even though we're seeing generative AI make these crazy, amazing artwork and movies
Yeah.
and things like that. But still, the way that it's able to make that, going back to the extrapolation that I was talking about, it has to have this foundation. Without that foundation, it doesn't go anywhere. So, yeah, Skylar, I totally agree. So it's just like creativity and the human components for AI to really get to that level. And again, going back to the movie Blade Runner and the replicants, that's the thing. Actually, in the scene where he's trying to figure out if she's a replicant or not, she's actually smoking a cigarette,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah.
which is
That's right.
nuts. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
Kind of
is pretty
crazy.
nuts. It's a great movie, by the way.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that movie.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess so. A couple things there. This is a great conversation. This just thinking about kind of how a couple things. One, so it sounds like obviously you're going to need the human expertise. What type of, from your recruiting standpoint, what roles are you seeing come your way? What's the different
Yeah,
skill sets that are needed, and how are firms kind of implementing this? Because obviously integration is key, right? And I kind of what I'm seeing too is the opportunity for knowledge bases, a business knowledge base that they connect across their value chain in their business would be a very advantageous thing to have,
yeah,
assuming that they have data management, all the things you said,
yeah,
governance and everything in place. I'm just curious what you're seeing as trends and
yeah. I
opportunities
mean,
when it comes to recruiting in different roles.
we've covered some of them in some of the different videos that I've put out, like the prompt engineer. Again, that's just shows you like a whole human intervention. That's why you need that prompt engineer. But there's other aspects of it. That's why some people are proceeding with some level of caution, because when you build some of these different systems and things, we did another video on adversarial data scientists, which is really a data scientist, which is like like companies hire like a white hat hacker, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is basically a data scientist that is so these AI systems can be poisoned at, to be working against you. Just kind of like the way we were talking about the RFID thing with the cars. They're basically taking the system that the car company built and using it against itself in order to get into your car and drive off with it within, I think, 10 seconds. They don't even need to break a window. So, in the same way, the bad actors uh, can do these different things. So, if I'm a chief data officer, a CTO, whatever, and we're finding ourselves a little bit behind, we're not doing some of these things. they are proceeding with some level of caution when they're doing some of this stuff, because these same systems that you're building could be worked against you, but you do kind of have some initial low hanging fruit that you need to attack as part of your strategy in moving closer to this direction that you should be moving towards. So the jobs that we're seeing: prompt engineer, adversarial data scientist, of course, machine learning engineers. And again, a lot of these will have titles like machine learning engineer or AI engineer, AI architect, some of these type of things. But you really, when looking at the job description, you can kind of see what technologies that they're working with. It gives you a better idea of the tech stack and if it truly is that type of a role. Okay, so like any sort of a AI role where you're not working with machine learning libraries or deep learning or NLP. These are, and I hope I'm not using too much jargon. I just kind of thought about
No,
them.
so I think you actually defined
Yeah.
NLP
Yeah. Natural language
earlier. So that
processing.
was,
So natural language
yeah,
processing is the same technology, believe it or not. It's just the computer's ability to be able to read in a way. Okay. Read. And Google Translate is a perfect example that it's able to read what you're writing in English and translate it into French. But the same similar concepts with the ontologies and the semantics and the words are used anytime that you take a document, you upload it somewhere, and then all the fields are filled out. Like, let's say it's your resume, and it puts it in where your first name's supposed to go, your last name, your home address, whatever, all that. Just it parses it off the resume. That's using similar technology to NLP. Let's say it's similar concepts. It's not actually NLP, but it's using the foundations of it. Let's say. So yeah.
that's great. Yeah. So that's interesting. Just on a couple of things. When I think of just different businesses, and they come and they'll ask, "How do we get into this? What's the first step?" Right? Well, I don't know if you have conversations. You write a lot about this too. So I'm just curious. Like when people ask, well, what do I do next? I'm in the space. I'm not a
Yeah.
technologist. I'm not an engineer. What should I do from
Maybe
maybe an
from a
executive
small business
standpoint?
perspective as well, because they're,
Yeah,
obviously, you're looking
that's
at these
great.
big banks, but maybe some of the smaller businesses that, maybe some of the folks that
Okay,
we
that's
talked to.
good because that's what I was going to ask next. Yeah, because
Yeah,
they're not
yeah,
doing it. Right now, the amazing thing about the internet, there's a ton of resources available where you can take, uh, you know, AI courses and things that are very affordable for business, just get you up to speed on what is this stuff all about, really? What's it going to do for me? And really, it's at the end of the day, it's just understanding where your data is, taking out some of the fat in your business. We all know if we're running a business that there are areas that we can definitely improve certain things that we're doing as a business. And really, these resources that you find online, I'm sure Coursera's got some courses, but the guy that created Coursera, Andrew Ning, he's also got a website called deeplearning.ai, where I think he's got 1 hour courses for free. You don't even have to pay anything.
wow, that's
So
amazing.
yeah, so we should check that out. I don't know if he's charging anymore, but I know that up until a couple weeks ago it was free because he was trying to get a lot of people to take courses there. But he's really big on educating people on a lot of these technologies and things, and he's probably one of the biggest names in AI and deep learning. So that's what I would recommend, especially small businesses or medium-sized businesses, is to use some of these resources that are out there. Actually, we have a bunch of videos on my LinkedIn where
Yeah,
I have 5-minute videos that talk about some of these things, different positions and things like that. But really, with the small to medium sized businesses, you may not have, the first thing you're going to say is, hey, I don't have big data. I don't have lots of data. But there are ways you can use third party data to help you with some of the things that you're trying to do. There are people that will sell you data as far as, and we already use it as it is. We're using things like Zoom Info, for instance, to get contact information for people that we want to contact, right? I mean, that's data. Um, so it just really depends what you're trying to accomplish. But I think most businesses, they're trying, small to medium sized businesses are trying to grow revenue, reduce some of their costs, maybe create some efficiencies in their business that they may not have right now. I think those are some of the main drivers for most small businesses. But you can definitely leverage some of the tools that are out there, AI tools. Uh, I mean, for instance, we're doing this podcast right now. I've actually looked at some AI tools that will actually do a pretty amazing job doing video editing. Actually,
Yeah, yeah.
so maybe
We
still
use a
human
few of them.
intervention needs to be involved,
Right.
but if it can get you 80% of the way there, cool. Like it saves me a lot of time if I can get it to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And even to me, so I was just thinking, just obviously, and I'm not a technologist by trade, just a bit of a serial entrepreneur in different ways, but just being able to put different pieces of the puzzle together, like using no code software, automation with AI, creating a complete automation suite, if you will, of your business. It could really propel the smaller firms out there, folks starting out, to really take advantage of what they're doing and compete with the bigger guys and gals out there, right? The bigger firms that are
Yeah,
out there
no,
doing what they want to do.
Skylar, 100% agree. That's where it's going. And that's the thing that I try to have journalistic courtesy to not throw out a bunch of acronyms and things like that in what we do. I want it to be digestible for people. I think if people focus first on what they're trying to solve with their business, that's number one.
Right.
And then two, the technology piece, you don't even have to worry about coding or any of that stuff. I mean, I mentioned prompt engineer and adversarial data scientist and machine learning engineer and things like that. Yeah, some of the larger companies will hire some of these people. They really do need those folks. But even companies like Apple, I think on the new iPhone, there's a way just you can draw and create an app for the
It's
iPhone
amazing.
by just drawing. I don't know if you guys saw that video. You can create a calculator by just drawing it, and the iPhone will all of a sudden convert that into HTML, and boom,
Yeah.
you have a beautiful looking calculator now on your iPhone that you just created. So low code, no code is definitely the future. That's what's happening. As far as folks, use cases, getting overwhelmed by the technology. Hey, I'm not a technologist. I'm not really that digital. I mean, all the meetings that I've been in, as soon as you start to talk to non-technical business leaders and start throwing out all this jargon, I mean, that's going to be a very short meeting. People at the
Right.
end of the
Yeah.
day, large business, small business, whatever, you need to speak to them in English, in the language that they understand, whatever language that may be. It depends on which country you're in. But my point is that you need to speak to them in business terms and how you're going to help them achieve some of their different objectives, business objectives. And if it's an individual, that it may be their KPIs. Focusing on those things, that's really how this is going to help you. I think too much of the too many times I hear from people that about this coding thing and all this stuffs, and the courses that are out there, that there are a number of ones that talk about AI for business leaders, or um, they're like these high level courses just so you have an idea of what it's able to do. But now, also another thing that I wanted to kind of get into real quick, uh, we've we were able to. I mentioned the William Shakespeare example, where it's just like a book, but now it's getting to the point where you can do multiple things uh, at once. So if you look at a movie, for instance, right? So let's say there's a particular director, like a Coppola film. Okay, you feed it a bunch of Coppola films, and it's able to like generate characters and everything. So just think about the cinematography, which is one component, the actual writing of the screenwriting, like just all these different pieces. It's able to. So this is what we're calling now, multimodal. So it's not just one aspect that it's doing, like speech or like authoring a book or whatever. It's actually able to do multiple things. at once. And this is now the era that we've recently entered with ChatGPT. So you're going to start to see, I mean, as this evolves, it's going to get more and more powerful.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely like one aspect is math, right? It's not to the level yet for accounting or math, but it's getting there. Is that
Oh,
accurate to
yeah.
say?
Yeah. But the thing that I think we're going to start to see, also, I'm starting to hear some rumblings about it. Not that I necessarily work with grocery stores or retail, but
Uh-huh.
there are some companies that are bringing back their cashiers. You know, the self checkout. Well, they're finding self
Hmm.
checkout is also hurting them from the terminology they use in retail is called shrink, where people are stealing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
having people there. So look, what's going to be cool about this whole AI thing? I know people are worried about AI taking over their jobs. Being a human, having feelings, being able to think out of the box are going to actually really be cherished even more so now. You being like the smartest kid in math class is not going to be like that big of a deal anymore because
Yeah.
yeah,
I have a bot at home that scored perfect and you scored a 99. Okay. That's honestly, that's where I see it's going to go. Like you could be amazing at everything, like testing wise,
Yeah.
but like, for instance, even let's look at like heart surgery. Let's look at dexterity. Um, Now, I've seen some pretty amazing robots, though. I've seen some pretty good demonstrations that do the actual surgery. But I think I'm not a surgeon, but if you were to ask a surgeon, there are scenarios where maybe things aren't going so perfect. Maybe you hit a vein or an artery or something like that, and you need to be able to think on your feet what to do next and do it quickly. Kind of like the pilot that landed, Sully that landed in the middle of the Hudson.
Yeah.
I don't think an AI bot is going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, these are
Very good point.
these are the kind of things I think where we're going to separate ourselves from AI. I
Yeah.
always will. I think this is where we will always be in the pole position, if you will.
Yeah. Coming back to the human element. Um, Russell,
yeah,
I know we're running out of time here, so go ahead and wrap
Yeah.
it up. But thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun chatting with you. I've learned a lot.
absolutely.
Where could people go to connect with you and learn more about your company?
Yeah, sure. They can come to www.datatalentadvisors.com. We also are, and I think we talked about it last time, if I can talk about that, where we're helping folks market themselves a little better on uh, LinkedIn, other places, their go to market strategy, as far as helping them find jobs by helping them create uh, a go to market strategy that includes a LinkedIn profile review, resume revision, and a video cover letter. Because something like
Awesome.
84% of all interviews right now, something like that. The percentage is pretty high. It's in the 80s, are happening on Zoom. That's the movie. And a lot of people don't have a cover letter. Talk to amazing people. And my God, when you talk to them, it's so much better than just looking at their resume. Their resume could have whatever. It really is just like we're talking about this AI thing. That's a big difference maker, I think, in all of our human interactions we have with people. And that's why we do the Zoom interview to begin with. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do to kind of help some people get back to work by using some of my digital savvy and my teams to help them get back on track.
Yeah.
I love that idea. That's
Definitely
awesome.
recommend
Yeah.
people check that out. We'll include the links
That's,
below.
by the way,
And
that's mycvcover.com. www.mycvcover.com.
Russell, thank you so much, man.
All right, Mike,
Yeah,
Skylar, thank you for your
appreciate it.
time,
Thank
guys. I hope this has been insightful. Appreciate the time.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and reach out if you're interested in starting a fund, whether it's a hedge fund, VC fund, whatever fund you're thinking. We can help you out, and let us know if there's any other topics that you'd like for us to cover. Thanks for watching.